Let's start with something most people won't say out loud. A lot of men are terrible at judging people. Not because they're unintelligent, not because they lack experience, but because they've been taught to focus on wrong things. Words instead of actions, appearances instead of patterns, charm instead of character. And that mistake, it costs you. It costs you in friendships, that IT costs you in relationships, that IT costs you in business. And sometimes it costs you your peace of mind. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People are not who they say they are. They are what they consistently do, especially when it's inconvenient. But most people don't wait to see that. They rush. They trust too quickly. They assume good intentions based on surface-level behavior. And that's exactly how they get blindsided. Now, this is where it gets even more interesting, because revealing someone's true character doesn't take years. You don't need to wait and see forever. You don't need to go through endless experiences with someone to figure them out. In reality, there are specific moments, short, almost unnoticeable situations, where a person's real nature comes out instantly. The problem? Most men miss these moments completely. They laugh it off. They ignore it. They excuse it, until it becomes a bigger problem later. So what you're about to learn in this video is simple but powerful. You're going to understand how to read people accurately, without overthinking, without guessing, and without needing a long history with them. And no, this isn't about becoming paranoid or assuming the worst in everyone. It's about becoming aware, because awareness changes everything. When you start paying attention to the right things, you stop getting played, manipulated, or disappointed by people who are showing you warning signs from the very beginning. Now here's the controversial part that most people won't admit. Not everyone deserves your trust. And more importantly, not everyone deserves the benefit of the doubt. You've probably heard things like, give people a chance. Don't judge too quickly. Nobody is perfect. And while that sounds good on the surface, it can also make you ignore clear signs of poor character. Because there's a difference between being understanding and being blind. Strong men are not the ones who trust everyone. They are the ones who observe first, understand patterns, and then decide who earns access to their life. That's not cold. That's disciplined. And discipline in how you judge people will save you from unnecessary stress, betrayal, and wasted time. Let's make this practical. Think about someone you trusted who later disappointed you. If you look back honestly, you'll probably realize something. The signs were there early. Maybe it was a small moment, a reaction, a behavior you brushed off. But at the time, it didn't seem important. That's exactly what this video is going to fix. Because once you understand these key moments, you'll start noticing things in real time. Not after the damage is done. You'll be able to spot inconsistency early, recognize entitlement and disrespect, and most importantly, avoid people who bring unnecessary chaos into your life. Now, let's be clear about something. This isn't about labeling people as good or bad. Human beings are complex, but patterns don't lie. And when someone repeatedly shows you certain behaviors in specific situations, that tells you more about them than any words ever could. So instead of listening to promises, charm, or appearances, you're going to start focusing on behavior under pressure, behavior without reward, and behavior without an audience. Because those are the moments where people stop acting and start revealing. And if you master this skill, you gain something most people never develop. Clarity. Clarity in who you allow close to you. Clarity in who you trust. Clarity in who you walk away from without hesitation. So in the next part of this video, I'm going to break down 3 specific moments that instantly reveal someone's true character. These are simple, easy to spot, and incredibly accurate. Pay attention to them, and you'll start seeing people differently, almost immediately. Let's get into it. 1. How he treats people who can't do anything for him. If you want to understand a man's true character, don't watch how he treats his boss, his friends, or people he's trying to impress. Watch how he treats people he doesn't need. This is one of the simplest tests, but also one of the most ignored. Because on the surface, most men know how to behave well when there's something to gain. They know how to be polite when it benefits them. They know how to smile, show respect, and act right when there's a reward attached. But take away the reward, and everything changes. Now you're no longer looking at performance. You're looking at character. Here's the principle you need to understand. Respect that depends on status is not real respect. It's strategy. A man who is only kind to people above him or people he wants something from is not a respectful man. He is a calculating one. His behavior is based on what he can get, not who he is. And that kind of mindset always reveals itself eventually, because life is unpredictable. Today, someone might not matter to him. Tomorrow, that same person could be in a position of importance. And the man who disrespects others when they seem insignificant often ends up paying for it later, socially, professionally, or personally. But more importantly, it tells you something deeper. If he ever stops needing you, his behavior toward you may change too. That's the risk most men overlook. They assume he's always been cool with me, without realizing that the relationship is built on convenience, not character. So how do you spot this? You pay attention in everyday situations most people ignore, moments that seem small, but are actually very revealing. For example, watch how a man behaves in places where people are expected to serve him. Does he speak with basic respect? Or does his tone change completely? Does he become dismissive, impatient, slightly arrogant? These are not random behaviors. They are glimpses of how he sees people. And once you see that clearly, you can't pretend you didn't notice. Let's make this real. Imagine you're out with a guy. Could be a friend, a colleague, someone you're getting to know. Everything seems fine. He's relaxed, confident, easy to talk to. Then you both go to a restaurant. At first, nothing seems off. But when the server comes over, his entire energy shifts. He doesn't make eye contact. He speaks in a sharp, dismissive tone. He gets irritated over small delays. Maybe he even makes a sarcastic comment or acts like the person serving him is beneath him. Now, here's where most people get it wrong. They laugh it off. They think, that's just how he is, or he's probably just in a bad mood. But what you just witnessed is not a random mood. It's a pattern revealing itself. Because in that moment, there was nothing for him to gain by being respectful. No status boost, no advantage, no reward. So he dropped the mask and showed you how he treats people when there's no consequence. That's information you don't ignore. Because a man who lacks basic respect for others in low-stakes situations will eventually show that same lack of respect in higher-stakes relationships. Maybe not immediately, maybe not directly, but it always finds a way to surface. Now, this doesn't mean you overreact to one small incident or start labeling people instantly. It means you pay attention and remember what you saw. Strong men don't rush to judge, but they also don't ignore clear signals. They observe patterns. And this is one of the earliest patterns you can pick up on, because genuine respect is consistent. It doesn't switch on and off depending on who's in front of you. It doesn't depend on status, money, or usefulness. A man with real character treats people with a baseline level of decency, regardless of what they can offer him. Not because he has to, but because that's who he is. So the next time you're around someone, don't just listen to how they speak about values. Watch how they behave when there's nothing to gain. That's where the truth is. And once you train yourself to notice it, you'll start seeing things most people completely miss. 2. How he reacts when he loses control. Most men look confident when things are going their way. When they're winning, being respected, getting what they want. Anyone can appear calm, composed, and in control in those moments. But that's not where character is tested. Character is tested when control is taken away. When things don't go according to plan, that's when you see the real person. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice something most people ignore. A man's reaction to discomfort reveals more about him than the behavior in comfort ever will. Because comfort hides flaws. Pressure exposes them. Think about it. Everyone has moments where things don't go their way. Plans fall apart. Someone tells you no, you get corrected or challenged. You feel disrespected or overlooked. These moments are normal. They happen to everyone. But what separates one man from another is how he responds in those moments. Does he stay composed or does he lose control? Now, losing control doesn't always look extreme. It's not always shouting or obvious anger. Sometimes it's subtle. A shift in tone, not a passive-aggressive comment, and an ability to let something go. You'll notice it in how he carries himself when things don't favor him. Because here's the truth. A man who cannot control his emotions will often try to control situations or people instead. And that's where problems begin. When someone feels like they're losing control, they might become defensive over small things, refuse to take responsibility, twist situations to avoid being wrong, try to pressure others into agreeing with them, not because they're always bad people, but because they lack discipline over their reactions. And lack of discipline always shows up under pressure. Now, this is where it becomes important for you. Because if you don't pay attention to these reactions early, you might misread someone completely. You might think he's just passionate. He's just having a bad day. That's just his personality. But if you see the same pattern more than once, it's no longer a bad day. It's a habit, and habits define character. You probably experienced this before. You're around someone. Everything is fine until something small goes wrong. Maybe there's a disagreement. Maybe something doesn't go their way. And suddenly, the energy changes. The conversation becomes tense. They become difficult to reason with. They react in a way that feels unnecessary for the situation. In that moment, you're not just seeing a reaction. You're seeing how they handle pressure. And that matters more than anything they say when things are easy. Because life is not always smooth. There will always be moments of stress, disagreement, and unpredictability. So if someone consistently reacts poorly in small situations, it tells you how they're likely to react in bigger ones. That's not judgment. That's pattern recognition. Now, let's be clear about something. Having emotions is normal. Feeling frustrated, disappointed, or even upset doesn't make someone weak. What matters is what they do with those emotions. Do they manage them? Or do they let those emotions control their behavior? A man with discipline can feel pressure without spreading it to everyone around him. He can be frustrated without becoming disrespectful. He can lose without trying to drag others down with him. That level of control doesn't happen by accident. It's built over time. And when it's missing, you'll see it quickly, especially in moments where control is challenged. So instead of focusing on how someone behaves when everything is going right, start paying attention to how they behave when something goes wrong, when they're corrected, when they're denied, when they're uncomfortable, because those moments are honest, they're unfiltered, and they show you something most people try to hide, how stable someone really is under pressure. And once you see that clearly, it becomes much easier to decide how close you should allow that person to get to you. 3. What he does when no one is watching. This is where everything becomes clear, because when no one is watching, there's no image to maintain, no reputation to protect, and no pressure to impress, and no audience to perform for, just choices. And those choices, small, quiet, unnoticed, are what truly define a man. Now, here's where a lot of men get it wrong. They spend too much time focusing on how they appear in public, how they speak, how they dress, how people perceive them, but they neglect who they are in private. And that's a problem, because public image can be managed. Private behavior cannot be fake forever. At some point, the two always meet, and when they do, the truth shows up. So if you really want to understand someone's character, you don't just watch what they do in front of others. You pay attention to what they do when there are no consequences. When they believe no one will find out, that's where integrity lives, or disappears. Let's be direct. A man who only does the right thing when he's being watched is not disciplined. He's supervised, and there's a big difference. Discipline is internal. It means you hold yourself to a standard, even when there's no reward, no recognition, and no punishment waiting if you fail. But many men don't build that. They rely on external pressure to behave correctly. And once that pressure is gone, so is the standard. You see it in small ways. Cutting corners when it's easier. Being inconsistent when no one is keeping track. Acting one way in public and completely different in private. These things might seem minor at first, but they are not random. They are patterns. And patterns, over time, become character. Now here's the uncomfortable part. Some men don't want to hear this because it requires accountability. It's easier to focus on how others behave. It's easier to point out flaws in people around you. But this section isn't just about observing others. It's also about looking at yourself. Because before you start judging who deserves access to your life, you need to ask, who are you when no one is watching? Are you consistent? Do you follow through on things you said you would do, even when it's inconvenient? Do you maintain your standards when there's no one to impress? Or do you relax them the moment the spotlight is gone? This is where a lot of men need to wake up, because discipline is not built in public moments. It's built in private ones. The workouts no one sees, the effort no one praises, the decisions no one checks. That's where real strength is developed, not in talking, not in appearing, but in doing, consistently, quietly. And here's why this matters when it comes to other people. A man who lacks integrity in private will eventually show it in public. Maybe not immediately, maybe not in obvious ways, but over time, inconsistency always reveals itself, because it's hard to maintain a false image forever. Eventually, there's a slip, a contradiction, a broken promise, a behavior that doesn't match the image they've been projecting. And when that happens, people are often surprised, but they shouldn't be, because the signs were always there, just not visible to everyone. So instead of waiting for a major mistake to expose someone, start paying attention to consistency. Do their actions align across different situations? Are they the same person when there's nothing to gain? Because consistency is what separates real character from performance. Now, bring this back to yourself one more time. If you want to move differently, think differently, and avoid unnecessary problems in life, you need to build a standard that doesn't depend on who's watching. You need to become the same man, in public, in private, under pressure, and in comfort, because that's what integrity looks like. And once you develop that, two things happen. First, you stop tolerating inconsistency in others. Second, you naturally attract people who operate on the same level. So don't just listen to this and move on. Apply it, observe others, but also correct yourself where needed, because at the end of the day, the man you are when no one is watching is the man you truly are. By now you've seen it, not just heard it, but really understood it. Character is not something you figure out over years of conversation, laughter, or shared experiences. It doesn't come from what people say about themselves. And it definitely doesn't come from how they present themselves when everything is going smoothly. It comes from moments, specific moments. How someone treats people who can't benefit them, how they react when they lose control, and who they are when no one is watching. These are not complicated ideas, but they are powerful if you actually use them. Because once you start paying attention to these things, something shifts. You stop being easily impressed. You stop trusting too quickly. You stop ignoring signs that would have cost you later. And most importantly, you start moving with intention. Now here's something you need to understand moving forward. You don't need to confront everyone. You don't need to call people out. You don't need to explain why you're distancing yourself. Sometimes, the smartest move a man can make is to quietly observe, understand, and adjust his position. That's it. No drama. No announcements. Just awareness and action. Because not everyone deserves access to you at the same level. Some people belong close. Some people belong at a distance. And some people you simply outgrow once you see clearly. That's part of growth. And it's something a lot of men struggle with. They hold on too long. They ignore what they see. They keep giving chances to people who have already shown them, in small ways, exactly who they are. Not because they're weak, but because they don't want to accept the truth. But here's the reality. Every time you ignore a clear sign about someone's character, you are choosing confusion over clarity. And confusion always comes at a cost. It shows up as stress, disappointment, wasted time, sometimes even regret. Now, let's take this one step further, because this isn't just about other people. It's also about you. The same standard you use to judge others, you need to apply to yourself, because it's easy to sit back and observe. It's harder to correct your own patterns, but that's where real growth is. Be honest with yourself. Are you consistent? Do you handle pressure well? Do you treat people with respect, regardless of what they can do for you? Do you maintain your standards when no one is watching? Because if you don't, then you're not just identifying the problem. You're part of it. And this is where most men either level up or stay the same. Now here's the controversial part most people won't say. Sometimes, the reason you keep attracting the wrong people is because you haven't fully developed the standards to reject them. That's uncomfortable, but it's real, because the moment you become more disciplined in how you observe, how you decide, and who you allow into your life, everything changes. Your circle gets smaller, but stronger. Your decisions become clearer, and your time stops being wasted on the wrong people. So don't take this lightly. Use it. Start observing today. In conversations that I end small interactions, I end moments most people ignore, because that's where the truth is always hiding. And once you train your eye to see it, you'll move differently. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever ignored a small sign about someone and later realized it was a big warning? Or have you ever noticed one of these moments and it completely changed how you saw someone? Drop your experience in the comments. I actually read them, and I'll reach out to some of you personally. I want to build something real here, not just talk at you. If this video made you think, even for a second, then you're already seeing what most people miss. Stay sharp, and thanks for watching. And if you're ready to keep growing, make sure you subscribe to the channel, Cogniveil.